გამარჯობა, დღეს წარმოგიდგენთ ინტერვიუს ესტუმრთან, დიეტერ იანეჩეკთან, რომელიც 2013 წლიდან გერმანიის პარლამენტის წევრია. ბატონი იანეჩეკი თბილისში ჩამოვიდა ჰაინრიხ ბიოლის ფონდის მოწვევით. მისი პირველი ვიზიტია საქართველოში. ჩვენ ვისაუბრებთ ეკოლოგიაზე, მწვანე გერმანულ მწვანეთა პარტიაზე და სხვა საინტერესო საკითხებზე. So, Mr. Janeček, let me begin with welcoming you to Tbilisi.
Thank you very much for having me here.
It's a pleasure and an honor. So let me start with the air pollution case from 2008. As you might have noticed, Tbilisi has an air pollution problem, specifically the particulate matter pollution problem that the case specifically addressed. From what I know, it was an important ruling and a verdict that basically said that the government has an obligation, a legal obligation, to come up with an action plan for mitigating air pollution. And it was a verdict by the European Court of Justice. Could you tell us the story and also perhaps touch on the importance of that case and of that ruling?
Yeah, so many European big cities have these air pollution problems. And the European Union was making a law at the end of the 90s actually, and it was starting to be implemented in 2005 all over the European Union, and gave us people the choice to get to the governments and say you have to act according to the law and bring us not so polluted cities again. But in 2005, when I started my case, so actually in the city of Munich and many cities of Germany, I think in over 40 of those cities, the pollution standard was so bad that there was definitely a problem. So I went to the court, first to the German court, then we got up to the European court with some people helping me together. It took 3.5 years, and then the European court did a ruling which is now responsible for all over Europe, that we have all the same right to demand less pollution in our cities. So now the problem is what to do about it, and I think the only thing you can do about it is to change the way of transport in our cities. This means have less cars, have cars with less pollution. That's technologically possible, but rethink the way of transportation within our cities. And this debate has just started. I think we're not ready yet. Yeah.
So what made you decide, sort of fight this battle in the courts as opposed to in the streets or in the parliaments? What was the strategy behind, having an actual court case?
Well, I was living just on one of these most polluted big roads in Munich. So every time I think 60 to 80,000 cars driving along. And I had the right, because I was living there, to go to the court because my own rights have been defeated, to say like that. And okay, I'm from a green activist movement since 20 years now, 25 years maybe, and I found some partners who supported me. And Germany has a tradition that we fight for environmental rights now since, let's say, beginning of the 70s. So there's a strong community, a strong awareness in Germany. And the European Union, and this is a very positive thing, they gave us the chance to go to the courts, and all this together led to this activism. But in the end, the courts decided that my opinion was the right opinion and the opinion of the state was not the right opinion. And now the question is how we get things done.
Right. A big part of that sort of tradition of fighting for environmental rights in Germany is also the Green Party, the German Greens, right? By that time, you're already a member. By the time of the court case, yeah. Right? So, could we maybe discuss the lingering sort of success of the Green Party? It's been over 30 years that the Green Party is represented in the Bundestag. Could you maybe talk about the main reasons behind this sort of success and this sort of longevity that the Green Party has enjoyed?
Well, when you think back of ecological movements, maybe you have to start in the United States. So, in 1962, there was a big book that was published by a woman, and it was about actually pollution of environment. And this was the beginning of the global environmental protection activism scene, let's say like that. So,
Silent Spring.
Silent Spring, yeah. You just mentioned it. So that's a famous book, and there's some all over the world have read it. And in Germany, actually, it started a little bit later, I would say in the 70s. So the protection of our forests, protection of our waters and seas, also air pollution, because we have a coal and mining industry that was very strong in Germany and still is very strong at the moment. And automotive industry, Germany is a car country, so so we're proud of our ability to build cars and machines and chemistry and stuff like that, but on the other side this really had implications for our environment, and later we come to climate crisis. Now that's also one result is climate crisis, because we just focus on having economic growth but not thinking about the ecological impacts. So that spread it actually so much that the ecological movement in Germany, starting with the anti-nuclear movement in the 70s, which was quite successful because now we're phasing completely out of nuclear power plants. The anti-coal movement, so the anti-air pollution movement, which I'm a part from, also the rethinking of our cities. So all the cities that have been planned, I think in all over Europe and all over the world probably, have been planned just for cars but not for people. So, but if you're living in a city where just the cars is the transportation, you have a lot of problems. Air pollution, you don't have the space for the people, it's more dangerous, you cannot cycle along, it's not healthy. So I think it took some time to get to a conflict point where we are now, where I think the ecological movement in Germany, I would really say, is sort of hegemonic. So we are the ones that are dominating the discourse at the moment. It hasn't been all the time so like that. So there have been times where we had to struggle just to get into parliament. Now in 2019 we are struggling about the first or second place in the parliament. So that has changed a lot, and I think there is the greater effect. There is the climate movement all over the world that helped us also to address things more aggressively, and the awareness is quite big in the society about ecological questions.
Right. So according to a lot of people, part of the success of the German Greens lies in their willingness to sort of embrace other issues, to have a diverse political portfolio, so to speak. Whether it comes to international peace or the European Union, it's not just a party of green issues. It has a sort of a broad sort of base. So the question is, how do you balance that sort of multidimensional approach with a strong focus on sort of the ecology and the environment? And do you see a tension between that, or is that not even a problem?
Well, we had our times where we struggled a lot within ourselves and had a lot of different opinions, and there was a saying that it's good to have many opinions on one issue, but I think we overcome that the last years, and now we very disciplined in focusing on our messages from the outside, and when we're struggling in the inside, it's a struggle we lead, but we come to a conclusion. And that's important for every movement. You have to decide where you want to go, and you have to find partners which you want to fight together. And that's one thing that happened within the last, I would say, 10 years, 20 years. Then we integrated social movements. So social justice is a very important issue for us. I think it's different to have social justice movement in Germany than in Georgia, because the problems are quite different. So we have a social welfare system, but there's also poor people in Germany. There is a lack of jobs who have good payment. There is also the question of new jobs. So we all think about that from the ecological point of view. So I think the ecological issue is the innovation center of everything. So that's what the Green Party brings together. But issues like feminism, social justice, queer issues, so all the people have the same rights, and we don't respect people who say, maybe we respect them, but we don't want to dominate them, the society, who say there's different kinds of people in society, if it's from race or if it's from sexual orientation, or is it patriarchism. So we have an analysis which says everything in everyone in Germany has the same rights, and we have the constitution in Germany, which is very much helping us, because actually everything what we say is written down in this constitution from 1949. So, and that's very helpful. And in the end, so we managed to be a liberal party, sort of a left party at the same time. So there's a combination, you could say, a social liberal, a social left party, but a very, let's say in the positive way, radical green ecological party. And some of us would also say conservative party, because we have a prime minister in Baden-Württemberg with 12 million people, industrial-based state of Germany. He considers himself, he's the only green prime minister, as a conservative, because he's preserving the environment, and he's more based on the values to conservative thinking that says we have to bring people together and not tear them apart. So yeah, that's.
So far, sort of the Greens have always been sort of partners. Whenever in government, there would be junior partners in a larger sort of coalition, right? Do you ever see the Greens sort of ruling independently? Is this a party that could one day sort of be sort of the senior partners in a coalitionary government?
Well, there is one government actually in Baden-Württemberg, which is the second largest state in Germany with inside, and we are the ruling party number one. And for the first time, we think about why it's not so bad to have a small partner, not a big partner. So maybe that's arrogant, I don't know, but that shows something that at the moment, we found a level that's another level. So and the new polls, we're about 24%, conservative parties, 2-3 parties ahead from us. So we have to sustain that, because the last election we have been 9%, but at the moment the European election was 20%, Bavarian election was 18%. So we managed to get to the second strongest party now in Germany, and that brings a lot of responsibilities but a lot of chances, and I think the movement is now very sustained, but we will see what happens within the next years, which might be very important because people want to see change in Germany, especially on the climate crisis issues.
So a few years ago, there was a publication prepared by the sort of the Tbilisi office of the Heinrich Foundation, which sort of provided an overview of sort of the last few decades of the sort of Green Party history. And in that essay, basically, there was a passage that said that the German Greens have fundamentally transformed the German political landscape, but also that participating in sort of mainstream politics has fundamentally changed the Green Party itself.
Yeah.
So could we maybe talk about the ways in which the Green Party has changed in your lifetime, and where is it going?
Well, when I started in a countryside of Bavaria, very conservative area, the Conservative Party was having 70% of the vote at that time, the Green Party maybe at that area 3 to 5%. So in the last 20 years, 25 years, I think some things have changed. So the queer movement, the feminist movement, the ecological movement, even social justice issues have getting stronger and have getting to mainstream policy. There is a broad consensus, except for the right-wing party, which is now there in Germany, but is not so strong that it can dominate politics, that we have to do not something, but very seriously address the issue of climate crisis, that we have to transform our energy system towards renewable energies. There has been a consensus in the whole parliament. So these things have changed because they haven't been consensus in the 1990s. And there is even in the Conservative Party, I would say now, a shift towards bringing more women into power, to having a more aggressive, at least ecological image. So what they do in the end is, I would say, is somehow different, but they are all possible partners from our perspective now. Actually, the Green Party is governing in all of kinds of different governing coalitions in Germany, except for the right-wing party, because they are not in any of the governments, because all other parties don't like to work together with them, and I think that's good. So, but we're working together with liberals, with social democrats, with conservatives, with the left party. And somehow the Green Party in Germany is now, we have 16 states and we are in 11 governments of the 16 states, so that's a lot. No party has more government established that we have, so that has changed a lot, yeah.
Right, but some of the sort of issues that you mentioned with the energy transition, with the climate crisis, it's going to take a lot more than just German efforts of mitigation, right? Where do you see the role of sort of the developed world in general in terms of mitigating climate change? And do you see a role in that for the European Union?
So first to say, although we have been successful in raising awareness, we haven't been successful in really make Germany the front runner in fighting climate crisis and being the one who's bringing down emissions. So Germany hasn't done that very successfully. They have some successes in some parts of the environmental agenda, but really bringing down emissions has not been the success of Germany at the moment. So we're not the front runner. So the question for us is, there is the Paris Climate Agreement. It's been agreed in the European Union, and we think from the strategic point of view the European Union should be the front runner in tackling those crises by implementing those technologies and also those policies that not only helps to bring down emissions but building up a new economy for the people. So that brings also social justice, new jobs, and new democracy to people who are able to participate in society. So let's say this very in general. So now we have a new European Commission. So and the Green Party is not one of the part that is very that important, I would say, but we have some importance. So we have 10% of the European vote in the last elections. We are needed to make decisions. There's a consensus that we have to bring a new policy on climate issues in Europe. And as Europe is a continent without, or nearly without oil and gas resources, very slim resources, we have a big advantage. We could be the worldwide leader on these issues, and that's a question now relating to countries like Georgia, which are very well keen to be associated with the European Union, and maybe in the perspective from some decades also could be a member. So I would say that's an option, definitely, but it's not a consensus now in the European Union. It is not. So we should lead on those issues, and although there has been a lot of struggle, or Europe has been always complicated, and we have this Brexit debate, awful debate, and so I would say the years from 2015 we had the migration crisis, which is also a crisis of humanity in the European Union. How far can we go to help people who need help? It's complicated. Yeah, but we had these years, Trump election, Brexit and stuff like that. So, but in this year there have been some hopeful signs. The European election was not the winner for the right wings, it was the winner for actually the Green Party. So new elections now in Austria, Switzerland probably, even in German states, bring a movement more to progressive alliances, and so that's what we try now to transform, that we have a progressive European Union. At the moment it's not quite decided where's the direction, but that's what we're fighting for. Yeah.
We sometimes feel like those sort of bigger issues, I wouldn't say those are bigger issues, but sort of the emerging sort of issues of the migrant crisis and then Brexit, you sometimes feel like those are sort of taking up the space, and that they make it more difficult to talk about the ecology, because the media is so saturated with this, discussions of Brexit and Trump and all of that. Has it made it more difficult for the Green Party and for you personally to sort of put out this environmental agenda?
It has been difficult, especially until 2018. So actually from 2015 and 18 there was only one issue in Germany. It was how do we get along with refugees and all these side-linked issues around that, some populist issues like every Muslim is a terrorist or something like that. So, and the right-wing populists very well managed to dominate the agenda. We have one advantage in Germany, and this is very different from many other countries. We have a media system, so we have different media outlets and a public service and media that is able to discuss on narratives that are broadly consensus narratives. So it's not just a capitalistic system of media where everyone is just pushing messages who are bringing clickbaiting or something like that and just driven on emotions. It's more rationalized here. So, and then the German society, especially in the, let's say, the crisis of humanity, or what we call it, refugee crisis, actually the Christian part of society, which is still there, helped so much. So, and we get 1 million people to Germany, and there have been problems for sure, but the people that were helping, they were very proud of what they did. Yeah. And they were not so keen on going to right-wing populist parties. It's more those people who are not in contact with foreigners that have the problems, but that's an all-over-the-world problem. But now things have changed. I think people can't hear anymore these issues because actually the things have happened. We have to look to the future. We have to find new solutions, and the world is not getting better if we drive down our economic and ecological systems, because then we will have a state of crisis all the time. So it's better to think sustainable on these issues. Yeah. Right.
And it's very much the impression of the rest of the world that Germany has been better at sort of keeping the right-wing forces at bay compared to the United States.
Not completely successful in eastern part of Germany, but if you look to Bavaria from my part of Germany, 12 million people also there. So we have been quite successful, and they're now shrinking in their percentage. And well, there's 10 to 15% in Germany that is thinking like them. And there is even a bigger problem now. We had this terrorist attack to a synagogue in Halle in Germany just some days ago, and this was a right-wing terrorist attack. It was not the first one. So now we're starting a debate in Germany, what actually is the most threat to our society, and I think it's the right-wing terrorists at the moment that are evolving, and I think there is they're sort of working together with those parties. So that's changes the debate actually in Germany at the moment, because people don't want to have an unstable society. So even if they may feel offended by foreigners, they don't want to have an unstable society.
Right. Which sort of begs the question of, what's the best way of confronting it, right? What's sort of your take on that? What's the best way to sort of keep the right-wing forces at bay?
Well, I think it's mostly decided within conservative forces. So we as a Green Party, we can address issues and we can shift the political debate even within the conservative parties and in the Social Democrats as well, to say don't move to the right, because if you move to the right you just strengthen the right. So if you stay in the center of the society, and this means, you can talk about law and order, but you cannot talk about stigmatizing people for looking like, I don't know, people you don't like, or something like that, or be anti-ecological. So all these issues driven together is right-wing populism. If you just try to talk like them, then you will lose the debate. So. And that what's happened in Bavaria is that the Conservative Party before the last election tried to talk very rightish and they lost the election. We won the election. So, and after this election they talk like us more. Not exactly like us, but we have changed them. So, and now they start to very aggressively attack the right-wing movement, and at this point now with these terrorist attacks from neo-Nazis in other parts of this movement, actually that's very dangerous for the right-wing populist movement, because I think they never wanted to be at the center of a radicalized violence-based movement. They thought for themselves to be, I would say, like a, how do we call it, a wolf in the shepherd's so trying to pretend they are part of the center, which they are not. So it's very important just to make a fence to them, so, and not collaborate with them. So, and that's possible as long as you get them down in these percentages where we have them now. So, but it's going to be a struggle, because on the other side there is insecurity in the society for different reasons, and there is the internet. On the internet, many hope from us it would also just bring democratic freedom and freedom of expression. It did also, but it did also bring a lot of fear-mongering, engagement in the internet, which is not based on rationalism.
Right. Well, speaking of internet, I did see that you're interested in sort of AI, sort of emerging technology, digital economy, and then sort of the government's role in maybe legislating that, or coming up with a sort of a political sort of a way of addressing these emerging, harnessing their power maybe for the positive sort of cause. What makes you interested in those things? What do you think is a sort of a potential for the ecological movement of the digital economy and the internet and all the new emerging technologies we see in the world?
Well, Germany is not a front runner in, let's see, be most progressive in digital infrastructure or artificial intelligence or even a startup scene. We are a big industrial-based country. We have still number 4 in the world from economic power, so we're not weak. But the question is, what do we want to do with digitization and technology? So, and if you look from a global perspective, from the big companies in the world are not German or even not European companies. It's American and Chinese and some Indian companies, and they very much monopolized power. Some power for good, because they build up new platforms which are now not accepted all over the world, but now this power question is what do they do with their power, and is it not a disadvantage that there is only one who's, for example, Amazon in Germany is now making all the money with businesses trying to trade and sell. So, but it's not good to have only one company. So how can you address that? Well, from the technology standpoint of view, you have to be strong for yourself and build up your own platforms, for sure. From the sustainable point of view, you have to rethink the whole system of digitization, because not everything you can do is progressive. So if you build up just monopolies and if you bring down loans by that because there is no competition field anymore, or if you just deny that there is also an energy implication, because if you're building up big, let's say, cryptocurrencies, they might be interesting in some cases, but I heard here it's the problem with Abkhazia, and they are driving the energy consumption that high that you have really a problem to sustain the net. So the whole framework has to be innovative driven, yes, but on the other side sustainable and also social based framework, and that means you need to have some rules. Without rules, it's not going to help us. And it's not going to help us to tackle climate crisis, because the narrative that digitization is innovation is not true. It's just innovation if you have a framework that is helping people, and I mean the many people, not the few.
So, and if you do set up those rules in the right way, you do see a sort of a positive potential in those technologies for sort of the environmental movement as well. So the last thing I wanted to bring up was this energy transition issue. Are you happy with the sort of the COP process, the Paris conference process, and the regime that it sets up? Do you think it does enough? I did see that Germany is maybe off track when it comes to CO2 emissions. Yeah, are you happy with the process, and what do you think could be done better to make sure that the transition happens in time and that it happens sort of properly?
It's good to have a process. It's good to have so many countries that feel obliged to deliver now, even as the United States is now off the track, but I hope they will come back maybe next year. We will see. So the problem with the process is it's just something that politicians declared some years ago, and some of them have been voted out since then and are not the ones that have to deliver. So it was something that the public wanted to hear. But the whole question is to really do things. So, and Germany, as you mentioned, is not delivering. So we are not able at the moment to fulfill our promises. And it has to do not so much with energy transition actually, so we're quite strong in bringing new renewable power to the grid, but it also has found some kind of stagnation now, so we have to be more aggressive on that. That's maybe most important. But there is other areas, so the whole thing how we transport ourselves in our country, and it's still very much car driven. If you go to Switzerland or to Sweden, or to Copenhagen, which is maybe the front runner, so there are cities that can show you that the quality of life is very much higher when you find an organization of transport that is not so much based on cars, which is very simple and that's very innovative. So, and as Germany is very much dominated by the car industry, that was not an easy debate within the last years, and now it's getting better. So we have had broad consensus in Munich, in Berlin, with people voting for getting cars out of the city, not all of them, but let's say 50%, and bringing more space to the people. Yeah. And invest more in infrastructure, especially railway infrastructure and stuff like that, but also for bicycle lanes and e-bikes and stuff. So there's a rethinking of our cities. There's a rethinking which is kind of harder of the way we produce food and consume food, because we know that the whole thing that we have so much meat and so much cheese. I think there's only one country at least in the European Union, which is consuming more cheese and meat, that is Czechia, for example, because they have sort of culture of meat eating all the time. I don't know, there's also Caucasian countries that like to eat meat, and but the whole problem is we cannot sustain that on a global level. That's really a problem, because emissions is just getting higher and higher on this issue, and it's not good for our agriculture. And so we have to find changes also there, and then there's so many issues. So, and we try to bring a new government with a green stronghold in it, and try to focus on these changes that have to be made. Yeah. And the thing we tell the people is, you don't have to be afraid. I think it's a good future we can bring to you too. But we have to reorganize, and we have to find new technologies, and we have to do things. Because if we don't, we will face a really worst time in humanity, not only for the next centuries, but maybe for the next... Not only for the next decades, but for the next centuries. It's not looking good, actually, from the data, if you look from the climate point of view.
Right. Well, that might be a good bittersweet end to our interview. Thank you so much. Good luck for the rest of your visit to Tbilisi, and good luck on your keynote as well. Looking forward to that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.